Hello, I'm Beatrice Newman. We're doing something a little different for this series, and I'll be your host instead of your usual host, Peter. This is the Underrepresented Entrepreneur series. Being a Black female founder myself, I know how hard it can be to do business in London. This series tells the stories of founders that have successfully navigated business where sometimes their backgrounds limit opportunities. In today's episode, we're joined by Sehrish Raza, the powerhouse behind BizB. We unpack what it means to build resilience in an industry that hasn't always made space for women, especially those navigating cultural expectation, misogyny, and a pressure to shrink themselves. With unshakable confidence and clarity of purpose, Sehrish shares what it's taken to push through and create a brand that's intentional as it is impactful.
And one of the investors, he invests primarily in real estate. So I explained it to him. I was like, you tell me one deal that you made in real estate that grew at 100% annually every year.
They do a show that, did they?
It really felt after after I came back, I was like, I think I'm going to be one of those episodes which goes really viral and says that the founder was really rude. And I really thought that they're going to show it that way. But thankfully they didn't, because I didn't want to ruin and I wasn't rude. I was just...
Let's get into it with Sehrish on this episode of Venturing into Fashion Tech. Hi, Sehrish.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be with you.
We're super excited to have you too. And for those of you who have been listening to our podcast, you may have remembered our episode with Sehrish, which was about 2 years ago. What we'll do is we'll be linking the previous episode for our listeners in the show. I guess as an over-round, it's been 2 years, Sehrish, since we've last had you on the show, and what a journey it has been for you, it seems. You've fundraised, you've opened your physical experience center, and you've also shown great growth in terms of numbers. Can you tell your listeners your journey since we last heard from you?
Awesome. So, it has been a while, and it doesn't seem like it's been so long. But so in the past 2 years, one thing that I would want to start with is the Foundry and Beyond Form. You guys are people who have been connected with BizB since the idea was born back in 2020. So I have a very close connection with all of you because you guys have firsthand seen BizB grow from 0 customers to where it is now. So I always love to come and share all of the progress that BizB has made all through the years. And a lot of it I do account to the help that I have received from you guys. So having said that, in the past 2 years, we did end up raising our first round of investment from a VC based in Singapore. We have increased our user base from approximately 20,000 users to now almost 200,000 users on the platform. We currently have 25,000 sellers that are registered on our platform. And we have increased our GMV from, I think back then we ended at around $125,000 in GMV. And last year we ended at approximately $500,000 in GMV. So it has been a crazy 2 years for me. All of the facets brought their own sets of challenges. The fundraising was an entirely new experience for me. The challenges that I faced during fundraising, I don't think I faced in my entire entrepreneurial or career journey that I've had for the past 10 years.
I love to hear that. And well done for all of the success. That's phenomenal. I mean, going back to the fact that you've raised pre-seed outside of your home market of Pakistan, which is a path that isn't always visible or so accessible for underrepresented founders, and let's be real, also for women of color, right? So can you share how you made that happen and what unconventional moves you've had to make?
My fundraising journey is one thing that I always love sharing because I really feel that it could help encourage a lot of other women like me who are looking to fundraise for their startups. So when I started fundraising, I think for a year, I got a lot of people who were interested in hearing about my business. But at the end of the day, the conversation always got stuck on the fact that I'm a solo female founder. I got asked questions like, oh, for example, you're a solo female founder. What will happen once you have kids? You're already married, etc., etc. And then that really used to annoy me to no ends, because being a founder, you don't want to be treated like you're a planner. You are a founder. You are passionate about what you're doing, and that's how you want to be treated when you put your product in front of any investor. Then what happened was that because I started getting these comments so much, there came a time where I honestly came to a point where I thought that I do need to bring in a male co-founder with me. Otherwise, it will be next to impossible for me to raise funding. So I did. Even at that point in time, I was reaching out to local investors and international investors. And surprisingly, these were comments that I was even getting from international investors, not only my local ones. So then I started, when I was literally about to give up, I started researching upon this fact a bit, that, so is it easier to raise funds as a solo founder if you are, say, living in the West? And surprisingly, I found a statistic where less than 2% solo female led startups end up raising investment globally. So that's when I realized that it's not only a Pakistani problem or an Asian problem, it's technically a global problem. And at that point in time, there was a blessing in disguise. There was a program that started, the World Bank started in Pakistan by the name of We Raise. So what they did was they handpicked 3 startups every year, which they found promising, and they gave them they ran a bespoke acceleration program for them. So for example, if I went in, I had a mentor who would then work specifically on whatever they found in my pitch, for example, or in my business plan. And that entire process was the most enlightening process for me in all of the programs that I've been in yet. The reason for that was because my mentor, she was also an entrepreneur herself, and she was really blunt. So I realized that generally when you have male mentors, they're generally a bit nicer to you, to the women, because I don't know, for some reason they are. But because she was a lady, she had run so many businesses herself, she was really straightforward with her comments. And so the one thing that she found and pinpointed, which was absolutely right, was that I was never very comfortable pitching my numbers. Financials was something that I was never very confident in explaining or pitching. And then, I always used to have someone with me who would explain the numbers on my behalf. But then what she made me realize was that she made me realize that you can have people doing it for you, but you need to have those numbers on your fingertips, because no matter how great your story is, at the end of the day, the investor is looking for returns. So they only care about the numbers. They don't care about the story at the end of the day. They mildly would care about the impact, but at the end of the day, they need to know that you know your numbers so that you know how to spend the money properly. And those 4 or 5 months that I worked with her, I realized that it wasn't necessarily a problem in me being a female founder, but it was more the problem that I lacked a certain skill set that I then started working on. And within 5 months of that program, I pitched to Accelerating Asia, and they have a very rigorous selection process. You have to go through, I think, at least 20-ish interviews to pass. And then in all those 20 interviews, no one even once said that, you're a solo female founder, so that'll be a problem. So that was not a part of the conversation in all those interviews. So that's when I realized that sometimes, yes, it is a fact that it is harder for female founders to raise investment. But also, if we look in a bit deeper, there might be some things that we as female founders can polish a bit more to be more confident in front of the investors. So, for example, I always thought that when I pitch, I would paint a very realistic picture to the investors. Whereas when I saw men pitching their products to investors, I saw that they would exaggerate their ideas to no bits. They would start with, I'm going to change the world, and my idea, this has never been done anywhere in the world yet, etc., etc. So they sell dreams. And I think that's what investors really also resonate with, because if I aim for 100, I will then get to a 50. But if I'm aiming for a 50, I will only get to, say, a 20. Accelerating Asia was that pivotal point which had opened doors for me in the international investor landscape. And after that, I really feel like me being a woman of color, me being from Pakistan, wasn't really something that hindered growth for BizB from then on.
You mentioned something towards the beginning of your story where you talk about you being a female founder, being told or advised that you would need a man, at least like as a co-founder, to support you in raising money.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how I feel when if someone would say that to me. And I'd like you maybe to just maybe discuss your feelings at that point. Like, how do you overcome such misogynistic mindset?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that, always really bugged me when anyone said that was that, they never even said that, for example, if someone said that you just need another co-founder with you, it would still make sense. So, for example, if tomorrow I'm not here for whatever reason, there is someone else who will run the company, that would make sense. But just having a male co-founder with me, never, that annoyed me to no ends. And there was one point when I actually genuinely thought of getting someone on board. And that's where my husband came in, and then he was like, I discussed it with him. I was like, I think BizB won't go anywhere if I don't make this decision. And then so he said that having a co-founder is equivalent to getting married. I mean, it's that important of a decision. So if you get a wrong co-founder with you just for the heck of getting a co-founder, then you might end up losing your business altogether just because of one wrong decision. So it's like you will find that one person who will understand where you're coming from and who will believe in you as a founder, and they will entrust you with their money. I really feel it's very important to have a support system with you. It may be your own team, may be your co-founders, or may be in your close circle, because there are times as a founder when, especially when such situations happen, if someone is critiquing your business, that's fine. You take it in and then you make changes. That is important for your growth. But when they make comments that you just don't have control on, then you're like, what do you want to get out of this conversation?
Yeah.
So I feel it's very important also to find the right investors for your startup, because not every investor would be the right investor for you. And so if your visions don't align with your investor, the money actually becomes a liability for you.
I think one other thing that I gleaned from your first answer was also just the scrutiny that is really on female founders, right? The mental toll that must take on anyone, because yes, it might be true that if you hadn't had this other program to support you in understanding what you could be doing better, you talk about confidence. I think confidence comes in many different shapes and sizes, and we're often, again, being compared to what confidence should look like from a man's perspective, right? How do you overcome that kind of mental trauma, really? Because that must then follow you in a boardroom when you're trying to pitch an idea. Like, I have to be confident, but what is confidence, right?
I mean, yeah, I get your point. And it does take a toll on your mental health, because then you're always on the edge, right? Then you're not comfortable in the scenario. Then you're like, I have to be someone that I'm not. I absolutely agree. And it does kind of get you off the game. But what I understood, what confidence now means for me, isn't it? I don't need to over exaggerate. I don't need to, sell something that I don't believe in. But for me, now confidence means that whatever I am pitching, I am confident in explaining how it will equate in numbers. So as soon as I got a grip on how to equate my entire story in terms of numbers as well, that's when now it doesn't feel like I am uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like, I have to get out of my comfort zone. Now I have developed this newfound perspective in my own mind on how to pitch my business. And I think that has helped me gain more confidence in terms of, if an investor, for example, is even as difficult questions, if they are, like, at the end of the day, every investor asks the question, what will be my ROI? How do you, where do you think you'd be in 5 years? Now I'm confident enough to answer them that this is where the business will be. And I have enough knowledge to back that up. And yes, it did take a toll on my mental health, but also I really feel it helped push me out of my comfort zone as well.
Something that we have to do, not just as women, but I think in our day-to-day, sometimes the negativity that you're faced with, if you need to then look at it from a very different perspective to say, well, how can you grow into a better person. It sucks, right? Because you don't want to have to like worry about that. But then at the same time, it really builds resilience, I would say. And it sounds like you've been able to overcome that by building on those resilience and I guess batten the ball back to those who were naysayers to say you can't do this when you said, well, actually, I can. So really well done you, Sehrish. I'm really, really inspired. Now, at the start of the year, you had some very exciting entertainment news. So you were pitching on Shark Tank Pakistan. And as a woman, and particularly as a woman of color, it's really a moment that carries more than just business stakes. What was that experience like emotionally? And how did you hold your ground in that space?
I have pitched BizB so many times in so many places, but when the opportunity came for me to pitch in Shark Tank, I literally felt like I went back 4 years and I was pitching BizB for the first time. So I've been, a little background is I've been a big fan of Shark Tank and Dragon's Den. It had always been my dream to one day be on Shark Tank and get to pitch my idea. Never had I thought that it would come in Pakistan, but when it did, and when I did apply and we got selected, I was ecstatic. I still remember the day that we went for the pitch. They took us in just to get us a feeler of how the stage looked and everything. And it was so overwhelming. There were like 20 cameras and the stage was beautiful. It was huge. It was nothing like I've seen before. And I mean, it was just so exciting. And my lifelong dream was to go through that door and be like, hello, sharks, my name is Sehrish, and today I'll be pitching BizB. So, I mean, just getting to do that, I think in itself was such a treat for me. Again, there were so many other amazing startups that I got to meet when I went there as well. You're walking into a room where these 5 people are going to be extremely rude and judgmental to you. The question and answers, the pitch was for 2 minutes, and then there was a 45-minute QA session with them. And they asked all sorts of questions, but I was very happy that there was no question that, caught me off guard or that I didn't have the answer to. And I had an amazing conversation with them. Obviously, I couldn't get the funding because the valuation that they were investing in was much lower than what I had already raised. So obviously, I couldn't go for a down round. Being on the show brought me so much visibility and free publicity for my business. If I got the opportunity, I would do it again.
I just want to maybe bring it back down to when you talk about confidence, because I think it takes such confidence to go onto a show, know that you're going to be like really drilled, right, on these lines of questions, know that you might not walk away with money, but you're walking away with something a lot more profound, such as press, etc. And as a woman founder and someone who owns a business as well, I get really, how do you say, scared or fearful sometimes about putting myself out there, even though I know it's not about winning sometimes. Our audience listening today, can you share a little bit more about those moments of emotions that you go through and what really just makes you go out and do it and win?
That's a very interesting thing that you just picked upon, because that is a discussion that I have, again, a lot with my husband as well. So I have grown up with 2 brothers. So I'm very thick-skinned. I am very okay with rejection. I am very okay with people being mean. And I think that's something that has really helped me in my life, because I'm genuinely very okay with rejection. So even when, for example, the Shark Tank thing happened, and when I came back, so all of the people who were close to me were like, oh, it's okay, I mean, like, nothing's lost, etc. And I wasn't even sad. I was still excited after I came back from the show. I was just excited that I got to be there. I really feel like just being thick-skinned is something that is essentially important if you want to be a founder, because there will be a million rejections, but I always just enjoy the opportunity to get to pitch anywhere. I never really care about the outcome. I generally go into all of these opportunities just as a way for me to maybe improve myself, maybe build networks. And I really feel like if I even get one good connection from any place that I'm pitching in, I think that's a win for me.
Getting comfortable with rejection is really the message of today. And I really appreciate their honesty, because as much as we want this podcast actually to talk about inspiring stories and to, I think, give a certain positive spin on entrepreneurship, I think it's also really important to understand what some of the somewhat negative sides are to entrepreneurship, but not that they're negative and you can't surpass them. You can definitely overcome them and surpass them. Circling back to rejection with Shark Tank, I mean, could you give us a little bit more insight for those of who might not have watched the show? Like, what was that rejection like? What did they reject? Sometimes rejection isn't just also taking it on chin and walking away. How did you deal with it in that space there and then with the sharks?
What they got stuck on was the valuation, because obviously I raised from an international investor. So for the Pakistani market, generally my startup's valuation is a tad bit higher. So the entire conversation then was, all the question answers were around, you're very highly valued. You need to, bring down your valuation. We want 20% of your business, or we want X% of your business. At the end of the day, I had to shut that down, because I had to be like, I respect your opinions, but at the end of the day, as an investor, if you want me to raise a down round for such a small amount of money, then how do you expect me to go to an investor and ask for 1 million and give them, say, 20% of my equity, whereby for, say, $10,000, I've given away 15%. So it doesn't mathematically make sense, right? So you're basically paving a way for me to die 1 year down the line. I was very clear with them regarding this particular topic, that, it's impossible for me to raise. It is illogical, actually, not impossible, but illogical for me to raise a down round. It is illogical for you to put your money in a company that will raise a down round. And then thirdly, the one thing that I really emphasized on was, so a lot of the startups that they did invest in were startups that were just starting off, right? Like startups who are looking for very small checks, from 10, 12, $15,000. But those startups were willing to give away, say, 20% or 25% against this small amount of money, which was, again, something that was not logical. But that's something that the investor needs to be informed of more than the startup. Because, for example, for a first-time founder, obviously they won't have as much knowledge on this topic. But as an investor, if you're taking up so much equity in the first round, then how do you expect them to justify it to the next investor that's coming in? So a lot of the conversation just was around this one topic, where I had to convince them, and I had to, make them understand that it's not like I'm being rigid just because I don't want to give away equity. And then I also try to make them understand that you putting in money in a startup that's valued at $0 right now in the market, and getting, say, 20%, is that worth more to you, or getting, say, 1.5% in a company that's already valued at $2.8 million in the market? Is that more value to you? Obviously, them being sharks, try to get me off my game by saying, like, your numbers are, really less. And then obviously I had the numbers to back it up, that I've been growing at a trajectory of more than 100% every year. And then one of the investors, he invests primarily in real estate. So I explained it to him. I was like, you tell me one deal that you made in real estate that grew at 100% annually every year.
They do a show that, did they?
It really felt after after I came back, I was like, I think I'm going to be one of those episodes which goes really viral and says that the founder was really rude. And I really thought they're gonna show it that way, but thankfully they didn't, because I didn't want to ruin and I wasn't rude. I was just logically explaining.
It's not rude at all. It's you being assertive. And again, I love that. We need more women to not feel afraid of being assertive. And when they are being assertive, that being labeled as rude. I mean, we can go back in and talk about how you were talked to by the sharks, because in some ways, it kind of sounds like they're trying to screw you over. And when you go back to saying it's the ability of the investor to really talk to the startups and make things ecological and fair,
Yeah.
when we back to understanding capitalism and just the fundamental of business, particularly in the Western world, it's never really about fairness. It's about how much you can grab, right? So in some sense, I don't know if you would agree, but they were trying to screw you over, right?
And they did screw over a lot of the other startups like that. But I mean, luckily, I had the exposure already before I went on the show to understand what they were trying to do. But a lot of the startups, just because the one shark said yes to them, I mean, they were willing to give away everything to them. And all of us know one investor cannot do anything. This amount of money is not even runway for 6 months for a startup. I still don't understand. I really want to sit down with them once and try to understand what they were trying to get out of the situation, because it was technically a lose-lose situation for both the investor and the startup.
I'd like to know as well, what do you get out of the situation? Because you're not necessarily going to get a return on your investment if you're pitching or requesting such high shares for a company that's only starting out and probably not even making at least that amount of money, unless it's about them grabbing a portfolio and being able to buy out the founder in order to progress the idea, but it no longer becomes the founder. I mean, there are many different ways in which this could go. We don't need to necessarily get into that, but I do think you've raised really important points, which is about it's important to stand your ground and know your worth and not be intimidated, because it's very easy for us to get intimidated, not because we don't know what we're worth, but when you're standing in a room with people who should know more than you and have that sort of experience and command that sort of respect. But then just because someone commands respect and has more experience than you doesn't necessarily mean you don't know who you are and what you stand for. The next question I have, I feel like you've already answered it, but if we were to summarize it, so much of mainstream entrepreneurial advice really wasn't built with people like us in mind. So what myths or norms did you have to learn personally while you were building your company?
The one thing that I learned the most was unlearning a lot of how I felt that I needed to navigate in the world. All of us can sit here and say that the world is very unfair. That's just the way it is, right? So we need to learn ways to navigate through that environment, and we have to pave our ways to make it big for. I think I've learned is focus on maybe working on yourself the most rather than focusing on fixing things that are not in your control. And then anything that is meant to, it will come. It will come at its own time. It might not come in the first year, maybe not even in the second year, but when it's meant to come, it'll come. Because now that I look back at my journey, if I had raised too soon, I think that would have been an issue for me. I raised at the exact time where I knew how to spend the money. I knew how to navigate my startup towards growth. One thing that I have learned through life is that people who say good work or good job to you, they actually are the ones who hinder your growth. Because once you feel like, oh, you're the best at something, it's human nature. You just stop working on yourself.
I think that's phenomenal advice. Maybe also pivoting back to the idea, or not idea, but just representation in itself. It's often talked about, but rarely and deeply understood. So what does true representation look like to you? And how have you embedded that into your own business and leadership?
BizB's idea came as just a marketplace, which made sense to me, that a marketplace where women can just swap their clothes and they could make those transactions. So that was the primary idea. But moving into my journey, I realized that it had a much greater impact. That's when when I started talking to my sellers, my buyers, I realized that these women need much more support, and this platform could add much more value in their lives than just being a place where they buy clothes, right? So that's when I actively started working on building campaigns in which we partnered with a lot of microfinance banks to help, our sellers become financially inclusive, because a lot of them didn't have their own bank accounts. They were giving their fathers or brothers or husbands' bank bank accounts for the transactions to be made. So we then started encouraging by giving certain discounts, etc., for them to have their own microfinance bank accounts. So we started working on, particularly on helping these women become financially inclusive while sitting at home. A lot of our sellers have turned BizB into a business whereby they're making a monthly income through the platform. We're trying to build more women like that. We're also trying to help underrepresented women by upcycling line. For that, we need people who will actually do the hands-on tailoring process. We're actually now working with underrepresented women who are good with handicraft work, and we are engaging them on a profit sharing basis. We're actually helping them build their own source of income as well, sitting wherever. It's just the tip of the iceberg right now. There's so much more that I'd want to do. And we're actively working on building more avenues where we can help just empower women, not only in our country, but generally as well.
That's amazing. And I think it's really amazing that you're able to really build this as part of the infrastructure within your own company and business. And I really look forward to seeing a lot more of that being represented in even the wider work that you do to really educate the audience and everyone that does come across your business. So if a future founder from a similar background were listening to this right now, unsure whether they belong in the room, what would you want to tell them so that they can hear it loudly and clear from your story?
I would suggest put yourself out there. What is the worst that can happen? No one will kill you, right? So that's the worst that could happen in anyone's life. They could critique you. They will, maybe say that you have a bad idea, you had a bad pitch. So what? If each experience that you have with anyone that you talk to will help you grow. So if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. This is now a life rule that I have really implemented, and now I understand this line much better than I did maybe 5-7 years ago. So if it again doesn't kill you, just do it. I mean, go ahead, put yourself out there. You never know, you might be missing out on pitching your product to the right person if you're scared to put yourself out there.
I do feel like that's really the message that's resonated the most to me also in just hearing your story, and Sehrish, and it's really building that resilience as well and putting yourself out there, not being afraid to fail really, which I think is the fundamental, because through failure we learn a lot more about ourselves and how we can overcome it. Quick fire round questions, you ready? Answer as quickly as you can. So the first one is, if you had to invent a product to solve one of your daily problems, what would it be called?
What would it be called? It would be called get 8 hours of sleep by only sleeping 5 hours. So I need.
I love the concept of that. The name says it all perfect. I think I might need that too. What is the app that you can't live without?
Spotify.
Really? Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do. I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to music. I just can't do without Spotify. That's the only app. Like, you could take away Instagram, everything from me, I'd be happy. Not Spotify.
Okay, I love that. I'm getting a good intel into your psyche as well. So for everyone listening out there, this is how you keep grounded, not necessarily Instagram or TikTok, Spotify. Keep learning and keep mentally sane.
Yeah.
When it comes to fashion, do you prefer vintage or brand new?
100% vintage. And I've recently gotten really into upcycling.
Awesome. And I think that'd be a bit of a trick question if you were brand new. So, would you rather have 1 million followers or $1 million in funding?
This is a question I really thought about. So 1 million followers. And the reason for that is because I really feel 1 million followers could help me build the community that I've always aimed at building with BizB. And that could bring in much more money for the business as compared to me having $1 million that I put into the business. So, and the 1 million followers will help me get enough money to grow my business as well. So 1 million followers.
Absolutely. And I love that logic. Last question. So you can only use 3 words to describe your style to buyers. What are they?
So it would be unique, funky, and sustainable.
I love funky and yes to sustainable. Sehrish, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today's episode. So much to take away and learn. And I really hope someone out there is listening and being inspired by the resilience of what you've had to overcome as a founder, what you continue to overcome and grow. And for audiences, you should really check out BizB. And if you have any questions, do feel free to send me. Thank you so much, Siri.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to click follow to keep up to date with the latest episodes. And if you like this episode, please give us a review. If you want us to feature a specific theme or guest, please give us a message at beyondform.io. I will see you very soon.